Hello and welcome to Figuary 2020. This is figure drawing month. So every day for 29 days, we're going to do a little bit of life drawing practice and build up our skills step by step.
Hi, my name's Kenzo and this is Love Life Drawing.
All you have to do is watch the quick tutorial that we put out here on Love Life Drawing and then go over to Croquis Cafe and do the quick practice session over there. And the idea is that by doing a little bit of life drawing practice every day, you build up really good practice habits, and we're going to be working on our skills, so it's going to be practice with purpose. And the skills that we're going to be focused on are the skills that you use in the early stages of a drawing or in a really quick drawing. Skills like establishing the really big, simple structure, the main volumes of the pose really quickly, establishing the gesture of the pose. These are skills that determine how good any drawing is, whether it's short or long. It's not about the fine rendering and subtle little shading modifications. It's about establishing the foundations of the drawing. So we are going to be focused on those skills for the next 29 days, and I hope that you'll join us. So let's take a look at some of today's poses and think about some things to work on, some things to look out for. We're not going to go through all the poses because I think it's nice to have some poses where you just see them for the first time and you've got to draw them in 1 minute or 2 minutes, and that kind of spontaneity. So at first this pose looks maybe kind of symmetrical, but it's not. There's a nice S-curve down the spine and a little bit of a twist in the torso, so you don't want to lose those features of the pose. The other thing to look out for is how the torso comes in at the waist, and then there's a fairly reasonably sharp angle to come out again wide for the hips and the butt. A really common tendency is to reduce those dramatic curves and sharp angles. So try not to make it too boxy. Allow the torso to be coming in and then let it come out sharply at the waist. Try to use big convex curves as you draw the torso. Don't go for little details like details of the face and the hands because there's no time for that. And just try and be bold. So remember, what we care about is the story of the pose. And when I look at this pose, the pelvis is being pushed off to the right, from our point of view. And so that is the thing that you don't want to underdo, right? We're always dragged towards being too conservative. So let's not do that. Let's let that pelvis come out to the right. So you could look at this and see this big gestural curve all the way down the figure, like a uniform curve. But when I look at it, I feel like it's more like a straight line down the torso, a sharp angle, and then a straight line down the legs. And if you put a horizontal line across to the pelvis, you would make an arrow shape. Whether you see that down the middle or down the right-hand side of the figure. That is what I felt when I saw it, but what do you feel? That's what you want to exaggerate and bring out in your quick drawing. So this one is a tricky one in such a short time because a lot of the torso is covered up by the arms, and then the hands and the fingers being splayed out means that there's a lot of intricacy to the pose and you don't have a lot of time. So one thing is to use simple lines for if you're going to try and draw the fingers, you just need to indicate their direction, or you could just go for the bigger shape that they create, the bigger shape around the hands. But don't get dragged into the hands for too long because time is ticking down. You've got to be decisive. The other thing is to notice that there is a really nice twist to the torso and the pelvis is kind of pushed back relative to the rib cage, which has come forward a little bit in the pose. Don't get dragged into the face. There's no time for any of that. So Larry has added some tricky elements to some of these poses, and it's really fun and really interesting. So this time the ground has been tilted and that affects the balance. So what you want to do is check that line that goes from the middle of the collarbones, or you could do it from the ear maybe, and just check that line. What's on that line? How does the foot line up with that vertical line? And then find the angle that she's standing on. Okay, and finally, this is the final pose. It's 5 minutes. Meiko decided to just go for it, pause the video, and do a longer, beautiful pastel drawing. So let's talk a little bit about time limits and Figuary.
A lot of the poses in the Croquis Cafe Figuary sessions are short. They're 1 and 2 minute poses, and even the longer one, 5 minutes, is fairly short. If you need more time to work on the skills that we're discussing, which is completely normal and natural because they're new skills, so you might not be used to them, I think it's absolutely fine to pause. But don't pause because you want to build up the drawing to make it look good with more details and more sophistication. I would say pause to simplify more, to figure out what you want to edit out, to work on having less lines rather than more lines. The drawing that I'm showing on the screen is the opposite of what I just said. This Mako here played through the pose a few times to build up a pastel drawing. Of course you can do that too if you want and if you have the time, but the main priority is just to find those bigger, simpler forms and lines that you would try to include in a really quick 1 or 2 minute drawing. And you might have noticed at the beginning of the drawing, the whole thing is just based on those same big, simple forms and lines that we were looking at in the quicker poses.
Anatomically perfect.
So if you're really a beginner in life drawing, let's spend this month really focusing on just trying to capture the main landmarks of the pose and the main big volumes, the rib cage and the pelvis. If you have a little bit more experience, really try to capture more of the gesture in the pose and balance that against the structural points. And if you have quite a bit of experience, one of the main risks for someone who's a bit more advanced is complacency, staying in your comfort zone. We're going to work on pushing our simplifications and our gestures to more of an extreme, more exaggeration. We're going to look at simplifying shadow shapes to more of an extreme, thinking about design. So those can be some of the focuses for you if you're a little bit more advanced. And myself and Mako are going to join you on this journey for the next 29 days. And our challenge is going to be to learn from great artists too. So we picked Richard Powell because he's a great artist for all those things I talked about, for the foundations of the drawing and for quick drawings and pushing the exaggeration and the gesture. And then for the slightly longer drawings, we studied from Lane Brown, one of my favorite figure drawing artists. He does such beautiful design in his shadows and his core shadows, and he does it in a really simplified way that we can fit into shorter poses, like even 5 minute poses. So we're going to learn from those artists in the first 2 weeks, and then we're going to learn more challenging topics. We've got Simon Luty helping us with clothing later on. Loads of really, really cool stuff coming up in Figuary. So share your drawings on Instagram. Figuary 2020 that is the hashtag. You can come over to the Love Life Drawing community to interact, to ask questions, to post your drawings. And we'll be over there trying to give some support, encouragement and feedback, and try and draw a little bit every day with us for the next 21 days.